Welcome to TommyTruthful.com. This is episode 33 of the Truth Mafia podcast, and we got some special guests today that we'll get to just here in a minute.
March 2023, a group of researchers formed the Truth Mafia, a collective determined to investigate conspiracies and occult mysteries that have been buried for centuries. With a passion for uncovering the truth, they delve into the darkest corners of history, pop culture, and ancient mysteries, seeking answers to questions that have plagued humanity for ages. The Truth Mafia is led by Tommy Truthful, a man shrouded in mystery and intrigue, dedicated to uncovering the hidden truths behind some of the world's most perplexing and enigmatic phenomena. Their research has led them down countless rabbit holes, from deciphering ancient symbols to exploring the hidden meanings behind popular media and literature. Despite the risks and challenges they face, the Truth Mafia remains steadfast in their quest for knowledge. Will their investigations lead to groundbreaking revelations, or will they unravel an even deeper web of secrets and lies? Only time will tell in this ongoing saga of conspiracy and intrigue.
Shout out to ParanoidAmerican.com for that fire-ass intro. And today we're going to get into magic in Hollywood. We're going to talk about, my crowd knows a lot about number magic and word magic and how they use manifestation magic up to an extent. But I brought on two specialists, our brother from another mother, the One-on-One podcast, and our newest brother here, Slick. What's up, Slick?
What's good? What's good? Thank you for having me, Tommy.
Yes. Yeah, man. Thanks for the invite. This is going to be big fun.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you guys on. And it was only right, episode 33. I just got done telling you guys magic equals 33. So I'm thinking, who could I get on? And Brother Donut's out. Me and him usually do these Truth Mafia podcasts, but he's in Hawaii. I keep wanting to say California. I don't know why. He's in Hawaii right now, living it up real big. So, he might stop in, though, for a surprise visit if he gets time. I sent him the link, but he's doing all kinds of stuff for his old boss that he used to work for, Chris. You know what I'm talking about, Juan? What's the name of Chris's channel?
Like AMB or something like that, man. I don't.
He's got a big following, like a 500,000 or something. Shout out to him. I don't really know the name of it either. I should have probably looked that up. But anyways, we got Juan here, Slick. Both of their links are down in the description. And if you're on our YouTube channel, then I pinned Juan's Patreon link in the chat because he has one of the most fire Patreons, guys. It's one I even enjoy myself. Where he can get into stuff that he really can't touch on YouTube. And we're looking into some new technology too that Juan got me hip to, that we'll be able to stream these videos directly to our websites. So we'll be able to watch movies with you guys, cover all kinds of stuff. But what do you guys got for us today? And this month has just been crazy with all these shooting rituals and fire rituals. It's a month packed full of astrological events, which, Slick, I'm sure you could enlighten us on some of that.
Yeah, man.
You want to preface it, or you or I? You can go first, Gabe.
Yeah, we're coming up on what used to be tax day. Very sacred day, right? 4/15, I think, is tomorrow, right?
Yep.
Yeah, but they moved it. They moved it up. They moved it to 4/18 now.
The day before the 13 days of preparation pops off.
Very interesting little adjustment just went down. And a lot of my old weaves for the past couple of years, I've been harping on the 4/15 as a sacred, day. That's the day of sacrifice. I mean, your taxes. That's where you give your first fruits. They take it off the top before you even see your own money. They take it off the top, and we know that firsts are very sacrificial. They're very sacred and magically supercharged, you could say.
Yeah,
let's not forget real quick that 418 in Thelema, right? The Book of the Law is very special to them. And we're going to be talking about talismans and word magic. But yeah, 418, it's not that number because of a coincidence. I think it's all orchestrated. Absolutely.
Well, what's the connection with Thelema magic? I know about the 93 connection with it, but what's the connection with the 418, brother Juan?
They had various numbers. 93 was one of them. I think 111 was another one. 418 was another one. And it's just different. Because what I think of it, so abrahadabra, which was the word that Crowley dubbed the word of the aeon, which signified the great work accomplished, which we know that these people are alchemists. They're trying to transmute reality in the real world, quite literally trying to slaughter reality and trying to invert and pervert everything, if you catch my drift. But abrahadabra, which we all know abracadabra, Crowley changed it because to equal 418. So it's linked to that sympathetic magic we're going to be getting into today. But yeah, 418 is texting.
There's a spell too that's avda cadavra. One means like we come to build, and the other is we come to destroy. Have you ever?
Can I pull my screen up, Tommy?
Yeah.
Let me pull it up real quick so I can show the people what I'm talking about when it comes to abrahadabra, and this is word magic.
And guys, let us know in the comments when Juan pulls the screen up if you can hear him good, because you know all the problems they've been having when I try to share my screen with you guys. They cut the sound out. So let's see here.
So we have here gematria, right, for everybody. This is mystical, and I like to show the people that exoteric, right? Abrahadabra. We have the we keep ideas here, right? Abrahadabra, Thelema. The word first publicly appeared in the Book of the Law in 1904, which we know that was one of Crowley's magnum opuses, and it's the central sacred text of the Thelema. And Crowley described it as the word of the aeon, which signified the great work accomplished. Also, Liber Legis, the Book of the Law. And so it's a magical formula, which is very important when it comes to all these things, because I think it plays a role into a lot of the things that we're talking about. And I always talk about Gabe, where he says that a lot of their gods, because in God we trust, but do we really know which God exactly that they're talking about? And even in our language, a lot of gods exist hidden. They're occulted. You know, we have Lunes, you have the moon, Martes, you have Mars, Miércoles, you have Thursday, Thorsday. So you have all these different gods of antiquity, even within our own language. The word grammar does come from grimoire, and grimoire is a book of spells. But we break it down here. Abrahadabra equals 418, has 11 letters. And I was recently on with William Ramsey, and I think do what thou will is 11 words and 11 syllables or something like that. So you have that 11 connection there. So has, right, numerologically equals 22. So the first words in there, A, the crown, right? So it's linked to the tree of life, right? You have the different sephirots. And it goes on and on, but Iowas in Greek equals 418. So 22 plus 19, manifestation, 418. Abrahadabra from Abraxas, father, son, equals 365. And the reason why they do this, to make it clear for everybody, is what I think is, I think it goes back to Pythagoras. And that's why a lot of secret societies revere Pythagoras, because he said all is number. And I do believe how Tommy says that we're in this organic simulation. So by you linking in a talismanic way these numbers to your name or to whatever in a sympathetic magical way, you're able to sort of hack this matrix that we're in and extract from it occulted properties. And that's what a magician and a physician back then were the same thing. A physician, he extracted from nature the occulted aspects in order to heal people. So back then, it was all the same thing, magic and the occult and medicine. Everything was all clumped together until we had the advancements that we have now, and everything is put in its... But trust the science, I think it's trust the seance for a reason. I think it sounds the same, but yeah. That's the connection with 418 there, Tommy.
And, you know, that's very interesting that 22 number was there with manifestation, because I see 11 and 22 with manifestation magic.
What does that equal? 33.
Right. And JFK killed on 11/22. But you really see 22 the most, I believe, with the manifestation. And it's the master builder number. and they're usually building on a ritual, which goes into both manifestation and chaos magic in a sense, because you're building on it, putting energy into it. For an example, like think of all the movies that showed us the destruction of the Twin Towers, right? And the Twin Towers are the symbol, the sigil. So they're putting energy into that. All these millions of souls is watching the video. They're putting their life force into it. And then they destroy that sigil in the 3D, releasing that energy. There's the chaos magic in it, you know? And the manifestation is bringing that event to life out of a bunch of different ways they do that. But movies I like to cover. That's my favorite subject. I mean, books, we could get into the books, the movies, the music. They don't call, you got to watch what you do with your hands on here. I just put my fingers like that. We'll get eaten up by the comments. And you know, a lot of times people that point that out in videos all the time, I'm thinking, but sometimes people talk with their hands. I do. I'm half Sicilian, so I don't mean every hand signal I'm doing, but yeah, this type of magic is used a lot. You know, Hollywood didn't get its name for nothing. That comes from the holly tree, and they would fashion their magic wands out of this holly tree, the Druids, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. I've heard that before.
Yep. I love when people call it Owlywood. They got a Owlywood. You guys ever seen how much somebody's got a graphic out there where the entire state of Colorado or of California is in the shape of an owl?
Oh, wow. Well, you know where the owl comes from. Yeah, they use it in Bohemian Grove. Yeah, Drake uses it, but it comes from Minerva.
Right. Yes. Paranoid American, and we had a weave on this a while back. He made a great point. You know, there are, in fact, like three real. I think I like to be like real nuanced. You know, I like to see what the differences are, and not to like group things together too broadly. But like, I like to point out how Athena, she's the original. I thought she was the original, you know, owl-bearing goddess of the Greeks. But Thomas, he brought in Lilith in the picture, and how Lilith, one of her symbols was the screech owl, I believe.
You got Isis in Egypt.
Right. And then in Egyptian letters, they actually have owls in their alphabet. You know, their owlphabet, right? And then Minerva is another one. But I'd like to, just to be a real nerd, like, you know, you can think of Lilith as Judeo-Christian. You can think of Athena as Greek, and then Minerva would be a little more Roman, and maybe a little like a later adaptation of Athena. In Athena, you know, she started out as like a defensive goddess, as she was born with full armor, with gray eyes, and
out of Zeus's head. He tried to eat her, but it didn't work out.
Right, yeah. Well, or some say he ate her mother, and then she was born out of him, out of his head, and Hephaestus had to crack his skull open. So she's literally the brainchild, right?
Right.
Of Zeus, yeah.
But then roll off his father's Kronos, Saturn, who was eating all his children.
Right. Yeah. So there's something kind of I don't know. I think it's gratifying to kind of know that she started out as a defensive goddess. That battle armor, she's got the shield. Is sometimes where she's the Medusa is depicted on her shield. But then, so Athens comes to venerate her, and Athens rises up and names the whole place after her. Athena, Athens. They put the owl on their coinage because they had a sacred silver mine in the area. Well, then Athens went to a fall. They had a disaster. There was a horrible storm, and they believed that that they had offended Neptune, and they thought that maybe they had given Athena a little too much credit, and they actually started to make it so that women couldn't vote, and they started blaming the women and the female role in society, in their politics, and then the women started to like become the scapegoat, kind of, and they went through a fall, and so Athena worship kind of went down in popularity and had to go into the underground and become kind of like something on the down low, so to say. So she
offended Neptune, aka Poseidon, aka Odin, Inky. That's who he is. I mean, how many names does that guy have? And Minerva is I forget which one came first. I just did a blog on this the other day. I broke down like Athena, Minerva, Mars, which Mars, going back to its origin, you got Marduk, Aries, Mars. And Marduk was the offspring of, I forget if it was Enki or Enlil, but he was the offspring of one of them.
Real quick, who did Fort Lauderdale make angry? Because we had remember you and I were talking on the phone, Tommy, the Supercell storm, and Supercell equals 111. I mean, we have the 111 connection there, and I don't know what other connections you made with it on the phone, but Supercell, we had this downpour, this stationary
111. Enlil, that's Enlil, that's Zeus, that's Jupiter,
Really?
That
we had a stationary storm over Fort Lauderdale, freaking put it underwater. It was crazy. I didn't even know about it until Tommy hit me up. He's like, "Hey, what's going on in Florida?" I'm like, I don't know. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's his energy. He's the sky god, the god of thunder, the god of the air. So some people connect him with Lucifer for that reason, the prince, the power of the air and all that. But he is the eldest brother of Enki, which they called Enki. But yeah, they're pounding Florida right now. And when I talked to Juan, Juan's like, "What are you talking about? That's got to be fake news, Tommy." I'm like, "Dude, it looks like you guys just got hit pretty hard down there." And then he started looking it up. He's like, "Whoa." And I said, "Dude, they keep calling everything a supercell right now. They call that a supercell over
the tornadoes."
All the tornadoes. There's a big one over Chicago where the twin eclipses make the X. They called it a supercell. So that's what made us look that up.
But Tommy,
and Queen Elizabeth.
To talk about Queen Elizabeth, the lizard people, we have right. The reason I don't, when you hit me up and I didn't know about it, is because I don't watch the news, and I think it pertains to the conversation that we're having today. Because the news, I mean, what a better way to warp people's perception, warp people's realities than the news. I don't watch it unless I have to, and even then, I mean, it's all, in my opinion, propaganda. But I don't watch the news because I think that some people fall in line with that and they start to live that reality that's been presented to them. And I mean, we saw that in 2020 with that thing. So,
yeah, no, I don't let it infect my life like that. I just use it to decode when I'm doing a decode or something my people want to know about. I tell them 99% of the stuff we're getting fed is complete BS in propaganda. That's why learning how to decipher it, learning this language, this hidden language that goes back to Jewish mysticism and Babylon, the gematria and numerology of it's a real important thing. But then, you got the symbolism, you got the magic aspect, and you have the astrology, which astrology plays a massive role. So, Slick, what do you think about the hybrid eclipse that's popping up on the 19th, the beginning of that 13 days of preparation? That's a rare event. The next one's 2031.
Yeah, man. Yeah. That is going on in a very fascinating location. It's right over those Java Islands, and there's so much volcanic activity all throughout there. Krakatoa popped off way back in like 1883. In Krakatoa, and it popped off in 1883. Krakatoa erupted on Vulcanalia, on the holiday of the volcano. It pops off, and that was a big one. They say it was so big forgive the globe Earth perspective, but they say that it circled the Earth 7 times when Krakatoa erupted back then.
That's
And
what
here
he said?
recent, yeah, it was that big. And I think it gave a lot of people, if you hear of people at the turn of the century dying from brain syphilis, I think that all those cases of brain syphilis, I think it got Nietzsche. I think Nietzsche died from brain syphilis because of Mount Krakatoa. Also, a lot of people went crazy. People just went insane, and maybe they didn't get diagnosed.
From the volcanic ash?
Yep.
What if he died from something else, though, Gabe? What if he died from peering into the abyss too much, and the abyss started to peer into him? You turn into the monster that you're hunting, right?
Maybe that's one and the same, right? Yeah. So we had the Tonga event just about a year and a half back. Tonga is just off the coast of Australia there, and that was
we just had that major volcano blow up in Russia. I know
right.
that's out of the way, but still, it was the day after Easter. And who is Easter but Esther, Aphrodite? Married to Vulcan. And then the day after her holiday, bam, they're putting energy into Vulcan, because Vulcan's not just the god of volcanoes. He's the god of metal welding, and we had a shooting. Where do you think guns come from? So,
yeah, buddy.
They're putting that energy into Vulcan.
Yeah, and real quick, and shout out to you, Gabe. You put me onto this, right? Because I did an episode recently on Fulcanelli, which means little volcano. Well, Fulcanelli is part of volcanoes or furnaces, or blacksmithing, right? The furnace is part of the alchemical work, right? The magnum opus. Well, the Agent Smith in the Matrix movie, what was he able to do? He was able to really transcend through the Matrix. So, right, Agent Smith takes on a whole different meaning, and it's all about working and transmuting reality, because he was able to he would always appear no matter where Neil was at. He would always transmute himself into whoever it was. And I mean, that they're putting these cinemagicians are putting these things in our movies for a reason, right? It's the revelation of method, and they put it out there. And I mean, when you start to really read between the lines and start to de-occult these things, you catch on. I didn't know about that. Gabe was the one that put me on that, but as soon as he said it, I was like, whoa, just mind blown, right?
Yeah, man.
That is crazy, man.
Yeah, Vulcan is he's a hugely significant character. I read Moses and Monotheism, and Sigmund Freud. He got a lot of flack for some of the claims he made in this work, but and his name is Sigmund, which is like the symbolic, the symbols, and the symbols and symbolism. Signs. That's the other one. Signs and symbolism are his specialty. And Mund means mind. It means the world. So,
of some white girl, which is that power.
Right. Yeah.
Didn't he steal Nietzsche's girlfriend too? Sigmund Freud?
There is something. I think there is something to that. I think you might be onto it. Yeah.
Yeah. He stole his girlfriend.
When you're partying all night, you end up, taking.
Oh, man. That's a thread I'm going to track down, because we need some names to solidify that one.
Very John Dee-ian, right? Edward Kelly and John Dee. You had Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard. He stole his girlfriend too. So you have all this connection with them, right? This replaying throughout history of they take their wives and they run away with them.
Are pretty. They like to share though too. They get into sex magic.
Keep it in the family.
Yes, 100%. Could we talk a little bit too about like how they're using magic in Hollywood, in the movies, in the music? I'd like to get into that eventually with you guys as well. But go ahead, Slick.
Yeah, well, one of the real treasures out of that book, and he got a lot of flack for making these claims, and I believe that a lot of what I'm gonna say here is partially true. I'm not making any broad brush statements, but I think to a large degree he is very correct, and that is that the Yahweh of the Old Testament, in a certain context, in a certain time frame, and in a certain legacy of the old Hebrews of the Old Testament, the Yahweh was a volcano god. And I've
heard people connect him to a dragon too. And I read the old Bible, and it says there was like these verses talking about Yahweh. They gave virgin girls to him, and he would take them, and they would never be seen again. Like, I'm like, whoa. So is Yahweh really a dragon or a volcano god? It's interesting.
Yes.
Look into things open-mindedly. People get too tied up in the programming that we've been indoctrinated into believing, and I believe in a creator 100%. Like, I believe there's a good force and a bad force, and it's balance. You can't have dark without the light. But I think organized religion has been used to divide and conquer us as well. And look at all the people they've killed in the name of this organized religion. I got Muslim people over here, Christian people, Jewish people. I don't care what faith you're from, you're welcome. But it's always good to look at everything with an open mind.
Right. I would point out to anybody who's like, strictly by the book on things, I would just point out that after Adam and Eve were cast out of the garden, the first thing God did was told his angels, now make for me a sword of fire. And who do you think he's turning to make that sword of fire? It's probably the heavenly blacksmith. It's probably Hephaestus. It's probably Vulcan. And so even, and you have to kind of have that lens to see that even in the good book, as they call it, these characters have a role there as well. And I think that my theory is, and this is not Freud, but my theory is that the sword of fire, which turns in all directions, is the analema, that the shape that the sun makes is a giant figure 8 in the heavens. And anybody who knows how to swing a sword, the value of a figure 8. Anybody who knows, even fire dancers, fire spinners, they know that figure 8 shape. And it's just interesting to me because tax day is when we are at the X of that figure 8. ATX is TAX. We are at the X of the analema, and that's on the rise. So that we pay our taxes as we're rising up the analema. We cross over that X markation, and then we go into Passover, right? And we're in the season of sacrifice, and we, make our offerings. Whatever. Different people do different things. Well, it's very interesting to me that it's about 4 months later that figure 8 drops down and it crosses over that X again. And we're in the exact same location. That's a very, very sacred point in time, because as we drop through that X, that is the week of Vulcanalia.
Wait a sec. So around August.
8/23 is when Vulcanalia starts, and it goes all the way up till the 26th or so. But then they have so Vulcanalia's first 3-day-long festival, and then they have Vulturnalia. And Vulturnalia is a river and forest spirit celebration, but it basically brings in all of the elements, because you have fire with Vulcan, you got the river. They say that it's after a sacred river in Europe, and then it's also forest spirits included as well. So it's like all of the elements are observed throughout. And that's also very sacred holidays. Let's see, Abraham Lincoln he sent out the ships. He launched the ships that fired on Fort Sumter on 4/15. Then he got shot in the head.
4/15.
The Titanic sank on 4/15. There's a huge list of events that
111
happened.
years ago, 111.
No.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
That's 4 days before the beginning of the 13 days of preparation, before this rare hybrid eclipse, which 4 is the only number out there that there's actually a phobia of. It's called tetraphobia. Fear of number 4. Yep. And in Asia, it sounds very close to what they call 4 to death. It's the number of death in rituals, the number 4.
Well, it sounds a lot like the word fear.
Yeah.
4. And I think in German, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. In German, the word 4 is fear.
everything's 4 too right now. Like all the new series, Stranger Things 4, and then we had John Wick 4. You know, there's all this 4 energy right now that they're using. So you know they got some type of a big ritual planned that's going to accumulate all this energy. What I personally believe it is, Slick, is that we're getting closer and closer to a world war that they're going to push on us. Unfortunately.
Yeah, buddy.
And I'm going to disagree with you on that, Tommy. I think that we won't even, because I just had William Ramsey on. He said that it's going to be 4th and 5th generation warfare, where we won't even have to do the actual stuff of actually going over there. I think it's all going to be a cycle. It's more of a psychological and
we're
spiritual.
Going to have to go over there, but we are going. They're going to collapse the dollar. America's offered up as a sacrifice. I mean, we're already at war. They just we have people over there training Ukrainian troops right now. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of shit going on that they ain't telling people. And all it takes is for Putin to say, you know what, I'm done. Push that button and shit.
So on the topic of Freud, his counterpart, if you will, right? We have Carl Jung. And Carl Jung was a very interesting character. I mean, there's various things that we can talk about him, but one of the things he talked about was the archetypes, right? The archetypes that exist that influence us on this subconscious level. And I think that when it comes to symbols and symbolism, and I want to read here the definition of sympathetic magic, one of the ones that we're going to be talking about. And there's various, once you have sympathetic magic and then you have things broken down underneath that. But we have J.G. Frazier, which he was the one that published in, I forgot what year it was, but the book, The Golden Bough. And you have here, if we analyze the principles of thought on which magic is based, they will probably be found to resolve themselves into 2. First, that like produces like, or that an effect resembles its cause. And second, that things which have once been in contact with each other continue to act on each other at a distance after the physical contact has been severed. So we have some sort of quantum entanglement. That's why I think that alchemy and magic is we're still practicing that today. It's just got a different name. And these alchemists, instead of having robes on in some cave, it's like how Manly P. Hall says, they're in 4 walls with a white lab coat on, and they're doing the same thing at CERN. What are they trying to do at CERN? They're trying to break through the barriers of reality. The alchemists are trying to do the same thing. Once they achieve that magnum opus, they would transcend reality and exist outside of it. And so we have here, the former principle may be called the law of similarity, the latter the law of contact or contagion, which I think that's a very important one, contagion. And I brought up the sympathetic magic connection when I did that zombie episode. And I think a lot of people got triggered with that, because the idea that during the Great Depression, the greatest movies of all time came out. You had White Zombies, you had King Kong, you had Dracula, you had Frankenstein. All the greatest movies, cinema, made some leaps during the Great Depression. Well, I was like, how is it that...
distracted, right?
Well, that's the thing. I asked myself, I said, how is it that during the worst economic time, an economic contagion, they also use that word, I said, how is it that they were able to come up with these great works? Well, the reason was because during 2020, when that thing hit, we know that theaters also didn't go out of business. We had AMC as a meme stock. They kept it alive, right? This egregore, they kept it alive. GameStop, all these things that were kept alive. Well, during the 1930s, during the Great Depression, escapism was a thing. And what escapism is, people were living through these images. They were living through these movies in these theaters. And if you really look at a theater, it's a simulacra of a cave. You go there and you're in a very relaxed state. You go in there and you open yourself up to whatever they're putting on the screen. And I think that Hollyweird really, they established this pantheon, if you will, of chimeras, of these creatures, of these weird things that they planted in our subconscious to talk to us on a deeper level. And I mean, the zombie concept came from when the troops were stationed in Haiti, and the black magic that they were doing over there, they didn't understand it. So they were like, these people are possessed and they're zombies. So the idea came from, it was racially motivated and racially inspired, the idea of the zombie. And of course, they named the movie White Zombie, which you can look that movie up and see everything there. But this idea that there was some sort of contagion that maybe perhaps is infecting people's minds, I don't know. And we had recently that show, which I still haven't watched it, the show on HBO. What's the name of it? You told me about it, Tommy.
You haven't watched it, dude. The last
I don't have time.
But The Last of Us, and if you remember when me, you, and Donut first talked about it, I said, I'm telling you right now, they're going to imitate this. And just last week, guess what? The first fungus ever transferred from plant to human. And they even said it was connected to global warming, which is what they said word for word in the first episode of The Last of Us. They say, yep, they say there's the fungus that infects the bull ant and goes in its head and, controls it. If global warming, because funguses would die in the temperature above 94 degrees, which my people knows what 94 equals. CP, I'm not going to get into that, but I'm saying the reflection of that is 49, that Antichrist number. But so if it goes above 94, also aliens 94, then it could mutate to the human body, right? It would be able to survive in locations above 94 degrees due to global warming, is what I was trying to say. So like, yeah, so they were saying global warming could cause it to be able to survive in up to 107, 110 degrees, and then it can make the mutation to the human body, which is what we literally just seen. Dude, this dude's throat was full of this fungus from a tree.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I got a little extra gravy to throw on your 94. I'll see your 94, and I'll raise you plutonium. Plutonium on the periodic table is 94.
Oh wow, that is interesting. During this whole event, that's connected to that number 94, and we have Pluto's return. We get
you
that.
Got it.
Yeah, that's crazy. What's going on with Pluto right now? What energy are we dealing with there?
Man, this is a huge one. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're aware that we're at a Pluto returns exactly from the signing of the Declaration of Independence. You'll get different dates on that. I tuned. What's that?
Also, birth of the Illuminati, which is why we.
Right.
14 days of preparation, the last day of it is 5/1, which is when the Illuminati was born in 1776. The same, that's when America was born. Pluto was in 27 degrees Capricorn at that time, right?
Right.
Exactly where it was. It's
yes.
here in time for the sacrifice of America.
Yeah, and it is a big deal. Pluto is the name is it's supercharged. It has so many meanings. It means it relates to Plato, and that is because it is the plotter, the tiller, the governor, the plow, the controller. And if you think of what a tiller does, this is dual meanings. It means like the donkey wheel on the old ships, where you it's a big round wheel with little handles, then you spin it to turn the ship. So that's called a tiller. But also a plow that tills the field is the same dynamic. It's the biggest wheel, and it's also the largest orbital ring in the system. So in that aspect, it's almost like, if you think magically, that they use a circle as a jurisdiction or a boundary. And if you're inside the circle, then you're in a sanctuary of sorts. Well, there is no larger circle that you could invoke anywhere that we know of larger than Pluto. It's the largest circle. It's the ultimate of jurisdiction. So they tell us that, and I could go on and on, so don't let me rant too long, but tell us, we have found that H.P. Lovecraft actually...
Oh, you went there. You stole it.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, man. we did a show on H.P. Lovecraft, and man, there's so much in there. But the Cliff Notes version is that he identified Pluto 4 years before the Astronomical Society acknowledged it. And so he was...
In a vision.
In a vision.
So back in Rome was considered the god of death, right?
Yes, you got it. Yep.
I'm pretty sure Pluto I know Hades is under that 13
Mm-hmm.
energy, but go ahead. I want
Yeah, buddy.
I'll
You're
let you
on-
take. I'll let you take the cake.
Oh,
Go ahead.
the number 3 is associated with Kronos, and Pluto, the Roman god of death. Pluto
Right.
has that 3 number too, like Kronos.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So yeah, H.P. Lovecraft, he made this claim way before it was mainstream. And then the Astronomical Society, they had a little powwow and they're like, hey, what are we going to call this thing? And they tell us, and this is all a myth, they tell us that they went home and they after their meeting and they were going to kind of brainstorm on a name. And that one of the guys in the group, he went to his granddaughter, who just happened to be studying the character Pluto in her studies, which actually kind of tells you that she was being trained in the classics. Just the fact that a child is learning about Pluto is actually their way of bragging about what kind of classical education they give to their children in those circles. And she suggested Pluto because it just happened to be on her curriculum. And when he brought it to the Astronomical Society, they were like, brilliant, brilliant. And so we're supposed to believe that a child gave it this name, but it is such a perfect identification for what that planet is signifies. So,
and for a little segue for the flat Earth people, it doesn't matter if you don't believe in planets. These elites live their life by this.
Yeah.
So
right.
that's what matters. It's the knowledge and how
Yes.
it's connected to magic and all this. You know, you have to. This is the knowledge we don't get taught. You know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. And that is such a great point. I'm glad you said that because so a lot of what I do.
You're not gonna finish it, Gabe?
Well,
Well,
a lot of what I do is I work in the Platonic realm of forms. And so they have mapped out our psychology through these myths. And whether it's actually factually, tangibly true or not doesn't matter because they have put forward the scaffolding of our thoughts. And even if you don't subscribe to this cosmology or another, it doesn't matter because they believe it and to such a degree that they demoted Pluto for a couple of years. They were like, nah, we changed our mind. In the same time that they took Pluto out of the pantheon of the planets, they found this other strange little body floating through the system. And they said, hey, what are we going to call this? And guess what they called it? They called it Eris, Eris. This is a goddess of discord. She's the one who gets, and Dis is another name for Pluto. And she's the one who comes with this golden apple, and she writes on the apple, she writes, for the most beautiful. And then she rolls it into the pantheon of the gods, and Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite get in a cat fight over who's going to get the golden apple, who's the prettiest of us all. And that is what ends up sparking off the Battle of Troy, the war over Troy. And so while Pluto gets demoted and he goes in, he's not culpable for a short period of time, Eris gets introduced into the pantheon. And so this Eris, it's a dwarf planet, and it's in a whatever.
Eris is connected to Hera, or she wrote the apple.
She wrote on the apple. She had the apple of discord, the golden apple of discord.
Is Hera, right?
Right. And so, yeah, she comes in and she introduces chaos, basically. And it's another generation before the answer to her archetype is born. It's her niece who is born, whose name becomes Harmonia. And so that is where things come back to regularity again. So I'm officially ranting at this point, but I just wanted to make that point that even if you don't believe in all this stuff, it is still mythologically impeccable. And that's what's important. They're reenacting these myths, and they're doing it with amazing precision. So yeah, what did I miss there, Juan?
the most important part, man. That on the so H.P. Lovecraft was probably arguably in touch with otherworldly entities, which we can get into because maybe perhaps there are these archontic beings on the outside of space and time that are trying to manipulate and have their hand in these affairs of humans, which, I mean, Greek mythology, if you look at all the literally affairs that the gods had with the humans, and you have the archons and the fallen angels, etc., etc. But on the planet Pluto, after H.P. Lovecraft pretty much was presented it 4 years before it was an actual planet or planet, whatever you want to call it, he was shown a vision of Pluto and he came forth with it. And so on Pluto, there's actually a mountain named after Cthulhu. And if you know who Cthulhu is in the Lovecraftian mythos, he's not a very good guy. He's like this demonic being that quite literally drives people insane from them just witnessing him and just seeing him. And he is the eternal. He is always he's in a slumber underneath the ocean, and he is. Right, he is in real Yath, I think this is the name of the city that he's in, but he's always sleeping, and when he awakens, I mean, bad things happen. That can be connected to Abaddon, right? The abyss, right? We have all these connections in the Bible with the unlocking of the abyss. So you have it in Revelation. And who loved the book of Revelation? Crowley loved the book of Revelation. I mean, all these guys are putting these things out there, but yeah, the connection with H.P. Lovecraft and Cthulhu, but not only that. You have the connection of H.P. Lovecraft and Crowley, where they might have been in touch with the same entity at the same time. Crowley was in touch with Cthulhu, which sounds a lot like Cthulhu, and I think it was while he was in Louisiana, I believe. If I'm getting that correctly, but the idea that maybe there's an outside influence, and that's what's taught these elites that knowledge. We have Baphomet as well, where again. They helped, if you want to believe mainstream media and mainstream history, they helped the Knights Templar create the modern day banking system, this entity that was prophesizing through the head of John the Baptist, allegedly, right? So we have this connection of these, there's always that connection to this otherworldly entity on the outside that's trying to kind of tap in. And again, I think that they're given the medium through the use of symbols, through the use of writings, through the use of, again, grammar comes from grimoire. So H.P. Lovecraft, maybe he was visited in his dreams through these alter egos, because I do believe that when a person dreams, maybe something unlocks, right? We always wake up every morning thinking that we're the same person. What happens when we dream? Are we going into another realm, or are we opening up portals to the other side for these things to come in through? Because H.P. Lovecraft was talked to through his dreams. He was having nightmares. And again, I mean, I don't know what that means, but it's just a connection that can't be ignored when it comes to the occult and the elites. I think that they're in touch with other things, and they believe that they're in touch with other things, right?
Right.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, they call them the ancient ones. But shout out to everybody in this live right now. We're streaming it to my brother Juan's YouTube. Shout out to all the people on there. Smash that like button. We got a lot of people in here, almost 400 people right now. We're streaming it to both of my YouTubes and my Facebook, and it's live on TommyTruthful.com. My homegirl said the celebrities, I believe, are reenacting ancient archetypes. They 100% are.
Can I talk about that, Tommy? Because I think that a lot of people give me slack for talking about the homunculus, but the homunculus plays a crucial role when it comes to that, and that's part of it, because if they're able to reenact these ancient dramas. So Crowley wrote about the homunculus, believe it or not, and he believed that up until the 2nd month of gestation, the fetus was soulless. And through sex magic and through ceremonial magic, they would set up this altar, and they would copulate on that altar in a circle. They would draw a circle, and they would consecrate it. Keep that in mind. And they would create and invoke these spirits into the fetus of this woman, right? Their astrological signs were compatible, et cetera, et cetera. And once she was pregnant, she was only presented certain things. She would be put in various shapes, because it's linked to sacred geometry as well, I think. And so they were invoking, right, these ancient Egyptian deities or whoever it was into the fetus. And again, when that baby would grow up, they would have the essence or the spirit. There would be a regular person, according to Crowley, but right, you have the story of the Moonchild, which was a story about a fight between a White Lodge and Black Lodge over an unborn child. And what these occultists do, and this is why movies are so important, is that they will go ahead and tell a true story in story format. So based on true events, they'll occult it with a story. Oh, it's just, again, based on true events. The names have been changed for privacy purposes, etc., etc. Well, I think that Moonchild is an actual story based on what Crowley did, because I mean, he was sick, perverted, and he was doing a lot of the darker side of the occult, and I wouldn't put it past him if he was actually doing whatever he wrote about for real. I mean, it's there, and that translates over to Hollywood. You have that one. What's the Rosemary's Baby, and the director of that movie, and what he got accused of after the fact. So again, they're living through their movies. They're again back to this escapism aspect of it, and not only that, but they suck you in on that, because where attention goes, energy flows, and we know it's all about the manipulation of energy, which is linked back to alchemy. So the transmutation of the actual world itself, the transmutation of people's psyche and their consciousness, and they're slaughtering reality real time. They're inverting things and they're changing up definitions real time. I mean, 1984 was an actual, right? It's becoming true, right?
Right.
It's becoming real life.
Yep.
You definitely ain't lying there. And I don't know if you guys seen this. This is a little off topic real quick, though. But before I forget, I did a decode on the Pope's Exorcist, which is on TommyTruthful.com with the full movie. It's a bootleg version, but the link to the full movie's on there. Juan, it is the most crazy movie I ever seen, brother. They battle Asmodeus, and he's the king
Asmodeus.
Yeah, some people pronounce it Asmodeus, whatever, but he's the king of hell who kicked Solomon off the throne and shape-shifted into Solomon and was trying to bang Solomon's mom and shit. So it was crazy. He can possess like 3 people at once and talk through all of them simultaneously. He's got a lot of
that movie Hereditary, which was also about invoking what into a vessel of a person, right? A homunculus. Back again to this concept. The one of the princes of hell, Hereditary. If you've seen that movie, I mean, again, even if it is, they're acting this out, so that has some sort of resonance in the ether, whatever that may be, because part of sympathetic magic, how I said, once you watch that and you partake in these things, and I know people who won't watch like these scary. I love scary movies or like horror movies, but I know people who won't touch them. They won't go near them because they're like, if I expose myself to that, what am I opening up, right? Like, what am I gonna open myself up to? And again, it's very superstitious, but it doesn't matter if you don't believe in it because they believe in it, and I think that's also a part of the ritual.
There's definitely some magic in this new movie. I promise you, there is. There's some. I even think there's demons attached to it, and it came out on April. Well, some theaters was April 7th. Some theaters are now April 14th, or I heard some people say the 15th, but it said exclusively was April 7th, and I had the bootleg since that day, which we all know is that 47 number connected to Tetragrammaton and the 47-degree Masonic compass. Also, whenever they're doing these loose energy harvests, it's usually an attack on the 4th and 7th chakra, which we see these type of harvests through movies a lot, these loose energy harvests.
Yeah, man. Just last week I put together an interesting anagram. The word propaganda. It's got that word pagan hiding out right in the middle of it. Pro-pagan, duh. And then I started, flip-flopping the letters around, and I realized we got Papa Dragon in there too. So I made a little graphic and sent it over to Juan with the picture of the lineage of all the popes.
Let me pull it up here.
The Papa Dragon, man. It's fascinating. In the history of propaganda is really something else too. They even, Bernays, he had to change the name of it to like public relations. These words, it's really important to just remember that we used to call it something else, and then that became, politically incorrect, and now it's called this, public relations.
His nephew owns Netflix.
Yep. Exactly. So we got
father of propaganda's nephew owns Netflix. So, they're using magic in form of propaganda, and, like Juan likes to call it, and they're Cine-magicians.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So I think that there we go. Nice, nice. Yeah. So the lineage, I think it goes from, I think it starts with Darwin. It might be a generation pre-Darwin, but it's always like second nephews. So it's like Darwin's second nephew was a propagandist, and then it goes down to Freud. Freud is in the lineage, and then
It's all
Bernays.
about the seventh son, Slick. It's all about the seventh son of a seventh son is very powerful. So they
Got a movie like that, The Seventh Son, which is all about magic and killing witches. Did you know that one?
No, I haven't seen that movie, but I've talked about the seventh son.
Check it out.
Yeah, it's all about keeping it all in the family and using pretty much the lineage as a talisman of some sort, as an amulet.
Yeah, there's this movie, every seventh son is chosen to fight these witches, and there's this one real powerful witch. She turns into a dragon, and she kills a lot of the seventh sons, and there's only 2 left. It's a good movie. I think you'd really like it.
I always like to point out, dragons. There are many dragons and serpents in the constellations. There's a good handful of them, and it is useful to actually know the difference between them. But they're also symbolic of addiction. And addiction takes on almost as many forms as there are types of dragons. You know what I mean? People are addicted to food. Some people are addicted to attention. People get addicted to a lot of different things. But I always like to just bring that up, that that's one of the many symbols around dragons.
I want to touch on sympathetic magic so people get a better idea of it. And the idea that, the first sympathetic magical device, if you will, that we've all been shown since, this is the one that everyone relates to, the voodoo doll, which has nothing to do with voodoo, but the simulacra of a man, right? They link that, and we see it in movies where they put all the pins in it, and they stab it and they poke it and all that stuff, and the person on the other side, right, when they burn the arm, the person feels it. That's sympathetic magic. That's what we're talking about here. And when you step it up above and beyond that, and you start using sigils, and you start using words and all these other things included into it, I believe that magical systems are meant to be evolved. They're meant to be changed to suit the practitioner, whoever's doing it. Because magic, in my opinion, is like the Force, right? We have the Jedi, we have the Sith. The Sith use it for evil, the Jedi use it for good, but the Force is there. And only the initiated, right? You need to be initiated into the Jedi Order or in a lineage. You need to be born into that lineage where you're able to tap into that Force. Well, they're putting these things out there, and who better than George Lucas, right? George Lucas, which, again, has probably some shady ties with a lot of big corporations, and they put it out there in plain sight. And I want to talk about, you talked about the astrological. So one of the things here I pulled up, because Paracelsus talked about image magic and talismans, and he's the homunculus daddy. Well, astrological and alchemical iconology, right? They have the idea that these astrological symbols have been watered down. So we don't see anymore, for example, a mighty and victorious warrior was called Mars and worshipped as a deity or patron for fighters. It was a mythological image of the war god to which the iconographic attributes were ascribed, such as the sword, chainmail, or armor. So they take these images and they water them down, but they're still sympathetically linked to the original one. So whenever you see the warrior slaying the dragon, that's got a deeper definition and meaning to it, right? You're slaying the monad. The sword is materiality, right? You have different connections there, but if you don't know about it consciously, I believe your subconscious is still there. And we know that the subconscious in the occult is a very important thing because they use it to implant and imprint these sigils on it. And when it's drawn back into the subconscious and we forget about it, that's where the real magic happens. So when they put these balloons out and they're blowing them up and everyone's celebrating it, well, they move us on to the next thing. They usher in the next thing. Boom, you forgot about it. That was the sigil. The blowing up, the burning of the sigil was the blowing up of the guide stones, of the balloons, and it was done along what, the 33rd parallel off of Myrtle Beach, the first
Releasing
main balloon that we saw.
energy.
Exactly.
Casting it. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. You know, I always love to tell people, like, you know, this is not medical advice, but I get a real pleasure out of, if I ever happen to encounter one of those random medical commercials where they like are trying to sell you the next crazy thing, and then they give you a whole list of all the side effects that it might have, and they read it so fast that you can't, and they pronounce like side effects that you didn't even know existed. I always like to make a point to refuse that offer verbally and actively, consciously, and not let any little side spell slip into my subconscious or sink in whatsoever. I always make a point to talk to the television and tell them, I don't think so. Ain't gonna have it. I ain't having it. And that is the sword. Words, swords, that's slaying the dragon. You don't let any of that stuff slip through your gates.
I have one more thing here that's important because, again, it's evolving. So it goes from the deity Mars to the representation of the sword and chainmail, which they put that in everything. In his pictorial magic, alchemy also plays a relevant role, and we're talking about Paracelsus here. Paracelsus insists that whoever wants to know the secret meaning of images must be an experienced magus, an alchemist. Otherwise, it is impossible to reach them. And so they take these alchemical color theory and they also apply it to these. So we have here the primary colors, right? Observed in the alchemical procedure for obtaining the lapis philosophorum, so the philosopher's stone, and those colors being blue, green, and gray. And we also have here white, yellow, and red. A lot of these colors are, again, used in what? Cinema. We have the colors in the TV, right? There's 3 colors. There's always 3 colors to make up the pixels, right? Well, more back then, but now we have more advanced technology. But the idea that these symbols are then watered down to colors, and how colors invoke certain feelings and certain things. I mean, look at Disney. I always refer to the go away green to show that Disney, they're alchemists. They have a way of creating a color that makes your brain skip over things. They manipulate your reality with a pigment. Okay, so when they paint these buildings go away green, your brain skips over them and you don't see them in your vision. So again, that I don't know if that's not more evidence of them being alchemists, then I don't know what is. I mean, that's
Well,
it's
you
hidden in
ever
plain
notice
sight.
when like a Netflix movie starts, all them colors come at you?
And the ba-bum, right? That sound that everybody knows and loves.
Yep. Which is a form you don't even realize now your brain's open to suggestion, and they don't realize that they're having. But see, and what people say is, oh, I don't want to know about magic. It's evil or this. Well, you better know about it, because if you don't know about it, then it has control over you when you're watching the movie and it works on you. Once you're aware of the spell, it doesn't have that same effect on you anymore, you know?
And they go on here to say, so the art of interpreting images. And Paracelsus wrote about this because, again, this was used to enforce religion at the time. It was during the 16th century, so it was used to enforce religion. We know that the cathedrals, so when you start to expand outwards in the use of images, they can use buildings as talismans, architecture as talismans. So the architect as magician, we have the idea that they want to put us in these 15-minute cities. Well, think about that, right? This memory theater that they're able to tap into, if they are able to tap into the simulacra of the model of the city. They're able to tap. You leave your signature on wherever you are in the world. They put this in Stranger Things, right? Where she's able to see a picture of the guy, and then she goes into like the astral realm and she finds the guy in real life. Well, same concept. They're able to do that. I mean, they're showing you real time that they're able to do that. But we go on here to say Convinced that God does not forbid every practice of images, he emphasizes that the demonic and edifying values pictures and images possess. So images are much more useful for the blessedness than sermons. So they're telling you images are invoking and unlocking something in your psyche much deeper. And it goes on to say, especially for simple people like children and peasants. And this is what they think about you. They think that you're a peasant and that you're as naive as a child. So religious images like those of Passion of Christ, quote, urge and move people to devotion and religious practices. What you see with your own eyes, quote, in your memory much longer and goes much nearer to heart than what you read and hear. I mean, there's people crying over movies. They invoke real feelings from you. These fictional stories invoke real feelings from people. I don't know if you saw as of recently, I mean, and probably like a year ago, where people were having psychotic breakdowns from watching these scary movies at the theaters. They were breaking down and screaming because, again, these movies are invoking certain things, and who knows if what that stuff that they put in you helps aid in that, right? Helps aid in manifesting these psychological things that happen with people, right? To speak in code a little bit. But right there, they see it. What you see with your own eyes in your own memory, it lasts much longer in your memory and goes much nearer to your heart than what you read and hear. Some people are visual learners. So this is, again, another use of image magic, pictorial magic, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, it's fascinating. You know, they took the kids out of the books and put them in the computers. You know, they really are. That's the new medium. I always love to just remind folks about the 2012. You know, a lot of people were making a big hullabaloo about the end of the Mayan calendar, and I've heard a lot of naysayers like, "Oh, there was supposed to be something in 2012." Well, it happened. It came and it went. And it was called the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, and they made it. They prioritized. They incentivized lying to the American public, to propagandizing us. It's, you know, some people will kind of tiptoe through the tulips on it and say, "Oh, they made it legal to lie to us." No. They made it beneficial to lie to us. And it is a long read, and they do a lot of referring you over to this subchapter and this act over here, and you got to do a lot of homework to solidify the case.
Slip that in there on us. That little, that was a crazy one. And then Fact Check tried to say it was fake, but no, it's real, 100%. I've looked it up numerous times. I think it actually went into law January of 2013, though.
Right. Yes, it crossed over that bridge. You're totally right. Yep.
But 2012, I mean, and then, you know, some people believe, okay, so if you ever read the Bible, it said in this one verse that they will change the laws and the times of the Most High. And then you had Rome come. So at one point, everybody in the world is going by a 360-day year solar calendar. Then here comes Rome changing it to the 365-day Gregorian calendar that we go by now. So some people believe 2012 is really, some people are saying 2022, but the numbers don't seem to add up. It's looking more closer to 2040 and in that area. So maybe that's when some type of, or towards that, you know, late 2030s, something will happen. If something actually happens like that, I don't know. But
you know,
one more thing, Slick, back to the sympathetic magic. Juan was talking about, there was this god in the Aztec culture named Tolok, and he was the god of the rain, right? And how they would do sacrifices to Tolok was children, but they would have to, if the children didn't start crying, they would rip their teeth out, rip their fingernails off. And this, because they wanted them to cry, because the tears from the children brought down the tears of the rain. You know, the tears of the sky, I should say. But I thought that was crazy. I was like, damn, if that ain't a depiction of sympathetic magic right there.
Well, yeah, there's also there was rituals. I believe I have one of them somewhere here, where in Australia, I believe it was before a little boy could become a man, they would rip one of his teeth out and they would bury it next to a tree, and to sort of linking right the family. They would have family trees back then, well, quite literal family trees,
Yeah.
and in a way, because again, they believe that nail clippings, hair, everything that falls off a person, you can gather that and use it for sympathetic magic. Because again, back again to this idea that once in contact with one another, what continues to be in contact with one another, regardless of the distance between them.
Yeah,
And
buddy.
that's crazy, that whole quantum entanglement connection, because with the black goo that we're not going to get into how they're getting that, but certain people are ending up with that inside of them, which is this is my belief, guys. I believe they're using it to entangle our DNA with the consciousness of some archonic entity from another dimension that can then use the body as an avatar,
Man, this is such a huge topic right here. We are looking at something massive. Okay, I want to point out how if back in the you said that were the Mayans that were doing that?
Yeah,
That, when that or the Aztec?
The Aztecs, I think. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's all good. So that indicates to us that they knew about the collective that far back, the power of the collective. But we speak about it in a dated terms that like, oh, Carl Jung gave us the idea of the collective consciousness. That's just that's just where you're going to find it in books in socially acceptable circles. Like it has been around that long.
Yep.
And then I also like to and what's fascinating about Carl Jung is, cinema was still in its infancy, so to say, when the idea of collectivism in mass and programming of that scale was formalized by him. And I think about, like, because I love Carl Jung, I gotta admit, like, I got a soft spot for old boy. He was kind of like a prophet of sorts in that aspect. And we know that Alan Dulles took him in and made him an agent. He gave him agent number 488, and he did a psychological profile on the Nazis, so that Dulles could have predictable a file to predict their decision making and their probability of what they would do strategically. So it's really fascinating and rewarding to know that.
How did he die?
Jung?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great question.
Because that number he was given adds up to 20, which is 20 equals death. I wonder how he died.
That is a really good question.
I'll tell you right now.
Yeah.
Was he murdered?
No, I don't think he did. I think he died after a short illness. Let's see here. Marriage travels later.
That's a great question.
So Jung became a full professor of medical psychology. 1943, continued to publish books until the end of his life, and then he died on June 6, 1961, after a short illness and had supposedly circulatory disease of some kind, CVD.
June 6, that 6-9 energy.
Right. Carl Jung and Kubrick had the same birthday, exact same day.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Kubrick definitely shot the moon landing, I believe.
Right. So one thing I like, something I've done on my channel is I've taken a very simple psychological matrix. It's called the Enneagram, and I've used it kind of like Carl Jung. If Carl Jung can do a psych profile on the Nazis, why can't we do a psych profile on people on the world stage? So something that I'm doing right now is I'm using the Enneagram as a lens to look at actors on the world stage, and it's a very revealing process. But then I'd just like to also mention that Carl Jung kind of had an antithesis in his time, somebody that he was intimidated by, that he thought, I don't want to say is like almost a philosophical nemesis of sorts, and that's Friedrich Nietzsche. And Friedrich Nietzsche, his whole thing was like not about the collective, was not about like going along to get along or identifying with this massive, I call it the puppet homunculus of the collective. Nietzsche was all about breaking loose and individualism, and kind of the Ubermensch and forging your own path. And for myself, I've gone through a strange kind of a turn of my own psychology by like saying, wait a second, I love Jung and I don't really dig this Ubermensch thing. But then when I start looking at the Ubermensch, I'm like, now this is an interesting antidote to what has become collectivism gone wild. And so I just like to point that out, that this collectivist homunculus is the best word for it, that there is something to be said about finding the philosophical antagonist and lending a little time and maybe learning from to kind of break loose, break out of the mold, so to say.
Somebody said this is getting racist. Yeah, it can be interpreted as that. That's why the right, the people that we know happened in World War II, they were lovers of Nietzsche, allegedly. But if you look into the story, which I've covered him, I've done an episode on him, it was because of his sister. And he was, again, kind of sort of brain dead. He was like a zombie or a vegetable. And she took his works and presented it to a high-ranking official that she was dating at the time. So it kind of wasn't his fault. But, again, yeah, he is painted in that bad light because of that. But if you really look into the history, it wasn't. It was more of her mishandling his estate, pretty much.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah. And they did. They really twisted something that's for the individual and turned it into a collectivist thing, which is an abuse of the fundamentals of that philosophy. So, yeah, great point, bro.
Well, they love turning anything into racism and using that to divide and conquer us. And then some people are just so dumbed down by it, they bite right into it.
I want to talk about here, Paracelsus talks about, and I mentioned this earlier before we got in, talismans inscribed with pictorial words or characters are one variety of artifact. Here, Paracelsus defines caracteres as the images of words, assuming that certain words potentially possess hidden powers that are evoked by spelling them, like conjuration. Thus, a talisman inscribed with specific characters should unfold its powerful effects, since words are the logographical transformed into an image. So, again, we have this idea. I've heard people say that motherboards and computer pieces have sort of sigil-looking things on it, almost like the Solomonic seals.
Dude, I just did this decode the other day on black goo, and look at this. So they got the Legion, which, remember that demon, I am Legion? And then we have the D-Wave quantum computer, which in the basic English cipher, where A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, and so on, you got D-Wave equals 55 matching Satan. And think about the owner, Juan, of the D-Wave, Gordy Rose. He literally said it was like they were summoning the ancient ones, these Lovecraftian,
the great old ones.
Yep. So that, you're 100% right. They use certain sigils and stuff with the technology, which you could get into all kinds of stuff with that. And that black goo technology, I'm not going to say the word, but just look at that 66. That's all I'm going to tell you. You know what I'm saying?
And again, it's also about, because I talk about Pythagorean palaces, which is the idea of modeling, right, capturing the dimensions of other things. So an example that I can talk about is if you have the dimensions of the moon or something, or Solomon's temple, and you build a building to that, it'll resonate with that energy. It'll resonate with whatever attributes or aspects are according to the god or whatever it is, and you use that building as a talisman to invoke the energy of whatever god or deity that you're trying to do. Look at the way Washington, D.C. is laid out, right? It's laid out in a certain occultic form. I mean, the obelisk is in a certain, where it's supposed to be, not by coincidence, but because it invokes certain energy. Look at the Vatican, the way it's positioned. It looks like a keyhole from the top, right? And the obelisk is in the center. Well, All these things are invoking certain energies, and by you going to these places, you're leaving your mark on there, and you could kind of sort of look at it as a way of entering other dimensions, if you will, right? Because their whole thing is elevating the consciousness of that building, the area, right, to invoke an experience, which is what we talked about earlier with the peasants and the children. That's why in these cathedrals they would put certain images in order to invoke an experience when they would walk into these places, these Pythagorean palaces again.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, Juan, and that's why they pick these certain ley lines, these dragon lines, these energy points on the globe to build them. I mean, look at all these rituals you can map out that make this 5-pointed star across America. The Oklahoma City bombing, JFK, Waco. We just had another one in Fort Hood recently too. Mexico City. Then you get into the weather modification with HARP and that technology, which is so far beyond that now. But you have Katrina, Andrew, the Haiti quake, Mexico City quakes. Then we have JFK Jr., 9/11, DC Sniper, Virginia Tech. I mean, there's tons, and it seems like they're pushing all this energy back towards the center where the twin eclipses make the X over that New Madrid fault line that runs up right there by St. Louis, right here, guys, where the X is. Right there. That's pushing the energy. And it lines up perfectly with Yellowstone's super volcano. So you got to wonder, what do they know we don't know? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I always hold a little space for the possibility that if the Yellowstone supervolcano is the biggest volcano in the whole on the planet, then that is where the energy of Vulcan is really being drawn from. Right. In the mythology, they tell us that Typhon had a battle with Zeus. Zeus trapped Typhon under the volcano of Mount Etna, which is on the island of Sicily. Big up to all the Italians in the house.
But all my Sicilians too.
Yeah, brother. Yeah, but the Sicilian flag is also, that three-legged shape is Medusa.
And it's red, and I have it tattooed on my back. I'm Sicilian.
Oh, cool. That's way cool, man. Yeah. Oh, wait. That means we got the same tattoo on our back, bro.
Yeah, mine's red and yellow with Medusa in the middle. Some people have Medusa with the snakes, or some people have it depicted with the legs, the leg wheel.
Right. Yeah, mine's a Triskelion. It's more Japanese, but that's correspondence. That's powerful. Yeah, that's way cool. Right, dude. So yeah, if Vulcan is the volcano god, then the ultimate center of that power is actually here stateside. It's not a lot of it psychically is attached over there to Sicily, but it's actually here stateside. But I'll tell you this is kind of fun
in itself.
Right.
America being the superpower and everything.
Right. And also, there's a lot of military industry coming out of this egregore of the U.S., which is us, collectivism, us, right? Putting us all in together. But I want to point this out. So Hephaestus, in his mythology, he gets kicked out of Olympus twice. Like when he's a baby, he gets kicked out, then he makes a comeback. And then he gets in some trouble, and he gets kicked out again.
There's a connection with Hephaestus, Vulcan, and Pluto too, because Pluto got kicked off as a planet. Vulcan gets kicked out of Mount Olympus. I noticed when I was doing that decode the other day, there's a lot of connections numerically to them too, and about their story as well.
That's a good point. Yeah, exiles. They're exiles, right? They're kind of kicked, and they're exiled to an isle because Hephaestus, he gets kicked specifically out to Sicily. He lands in Sicily. Well, look on a map. Sicily is getting kicked by the entire peninsula of Italy. Yeah. It's literally getting kicked by the toe of the boot that is the shape of Italy. And then real quick, I'll just throw it in there. I think it's Orwell who says, if you want to see a vision of fascism in the future, just imagine a boot stomping on the face of humanity for eternity. Well, that boot is the Italian boot of the Roman Empire.
Yeah, and people think like the Roman Empire is gone. No, they came back through the Holy Roman Empire and conquered the whole damn world through it. You know what I'm saying? It was kind of genius. But the Roman Empire is still very much intact. You have like Washington, which is kind of like the military industrial complex of that whole New World Order. You have London, which is, I guess you would call it the financial district. Then you have the Vatican, which is the religious faction of it. And then now it's kind of weird too. Israel's starting to play a part in the power structure too.
Right. If anybody wants to, you can take a picture of the United States Postal Service that it generally looks like an eagle shape, and turn it on its side, and you'll see that it's actually a boot shaped like Italy, proving that all roads lead to Rome still today. Well, I like to say all road scholars lead to adrenochrome.
that we say it over here, the adrenochrome.
All right.
I mean, hey, I've never got taken down for just saying that word. But
all right, good.
I heard one guy breaking it down that it came from two words that were connected to darkness, Adrenoch and Romulus, which Romulus is Romulus and Remus. So I was like, whoa, that's kind of strange there. That's bizarre. Mm-hmm. And just that whole connection to Rome. And then I started looking more into it. And there's stories about General Africanus, which was the famous general of Rome that fought Hannibal. Remember in them wars? Hannibal from Carthagena. He was like, that's the northeast part of Africa. That's why Sicilians are so much darker than Italians. And we speak a different language too. It's not a different dialect. It's a whole different language. But he had a stronghold down there, and a lot of the Sicilians have that lineage in them. But General Africanus,
I think is.
Yeah. If you look, Wikipedia tries to say he was named after Africa, which is bullshit, because I proved that wrong, because his family's bloodline goes way before Africa was named Africa. So they've had that name for a long time, and they've always been in the higher ups of that culture. But anyways, he was the one that was going over to Africa and getting little melanated children and perfecting that whole adrenochrome molecule and bringing it back to the Saturnalia festivals of Rome. So they've been dibbling and dabbling in that since the Greeks, and even going back to the Mesopotamian and Sumerian culture. I mean, they've understood the power of it, because what the power of it is it stops the telomeres in your DNA from withering. Your telomeres is the wick in your DNA. When that wick goes out, it's lights out. So it doesn't completely stop it, but it halts it. And I played this video for Paranoid American. It was supposed to be this Freemason that was talking about sex magic and it done with young boys and Freemasonry, and the reason because they were harvesting the energy from them, and that they could live longer from harvesting this energy, which is, it's all their stuff, gets into that living longer, and it's pretty crazy. But that's all part of magic and alchemy, and
Right.
They say it takes gold to make gold, and I think that's what they're implying there. And one of my favorite animes, The Full Metal Alchemist, when they discover what it takes to make the Philosopher's Stone, they're like, oh, that's what it takes to make the Philosopher's Stone. And it's like, are you willing to sacrifice somebody else in order for your benefit?